number the wires and you do it one wire at a time. The common is the most common reason your panel doesn't work. You don't just fit parts into a panel where they'll fit. You try to look at the wiring. So if the outputs are on top, I tend to put the PLC at the bottom of the panel. It's an interactive process. The PLC program usually gets done by somebody other than the person who did the wiring diagram. Now, in the case of like this little panel, I did the wiring diagram, I did the PLC programming, and I also built the panel. And that doesn't often happen. It's usually multiple people. But the PLC program gets all of its inputs and information from the schematic. That's why you want to do the schematic first, because this identifies the hardware that the PLC has to talk to, and therefore all of the inputs to the PLC, all the outputs from the PLC are, you need to have them here. Now, you notice I have blocks for the PLC. So as I'm designing this wiring diagram, I'm saying I need to control a valve, I need an output, so I put in an output block or an input block, and then you know that I put that in the schematic, and then when I go to do the PLC, I know that that's the I/O I have to use. So when you're writing a PLC program, usually the very first thing you do is you put in all your inputs and all your outputs, and that's the first step, because you have to be able to talk to all this stuff. And so by identifying that early on and simply making a list of all the inputs and all the outputs that you get from the schematic, you're halfway there. You know, you've got stuff that you can work with. And so when you say, I want to turn on that valve, you go in here and you look at what input it is, and there you go. Output, sorry. You go find the output from on the schematic, and that tells you which module you're working on and what the output is going to be, and that's identified. So if you do that up front, it's way easier to work, because it's a real pain when you're trying to do something and you can't find the output or the input. So I usually do that as the first thing. Now, you also wind up having changes all the time, no matter how hard you try not to have changes in the program and the wiring diagram, because as you're going along, you're frequently adding hardware that you may never have worked with before, so you may not actually know how many inputs or outputs the hardware requires, and so you frequently have to add stuff on. And so the program and the wiring schematic are always changing. It's really, really important to catch every one of your changes as you're going along, both in the program and in the schematic, and because they go together. Now, once you have the schematic, you then know what hardware you're going to have going in the panel.